For 3 decades, the name Johnny Carson meant one thing in American homes: comfort. Every night, millions of viewers tuned in to watch the man who ruled late-night television with effortless charm. Sitting behind the desk of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, Carson had a rare gift. He could turn silence into laughter, awkward moments into comedy, and ordinary conversations into unforgettable television. To the audience it looked easy. But behind the laughter, behind the carefully timed jokes and the confident smile, there was another world, one viewers almost never saw. A world where tempers flared, friendships collapsed, and live television spiraled into chaos. Over the years, there were nights when the show didn't go according to plan. Guests lost control. Feuds exploded. Moments happened so uncomfortable that executives at NBC quietly tried to make them disappear. Some clips were edited out. Others were buried deep in the network's archives. And a few were whispered about for decades like forbidden stories from the golden age of television. For a man known for flawless timing and total control, those moments were more than embarrassing. They threatened the carefully crafted image that had made Johnny Carson the undisputed king of late night. Because live television has a dangerous secret. No matter how powerful the host, how experienced the producers, or how polished the set looks under bright studio lights, anything can happen once the cameras start rolling. And sometimes, it does. These are the shocking nights when everything went wrong on The Tonight Show. The moments producers hoped viewers would forget. The confrontations that shook Hollywood. The feuds that ended lifelong friendships. And the truth is, some of these stories changed Johnny Carson forever. Because behind the legend, there were cracks in the crown. One of the strangest and most mysterious stories in Tonight Show history begins with a night that many insiders claim never truly existed. It started like any other episode. The studio audience in Burbank filed into their seats, buzzing with excitement. The band warmed up. Crew members moved quickly behind the cameras, adjusting lights and microphones. And right on schedule, Johnny Carson stepped through the curtain, greeted by thunderous applause. For the viewers watching at home, it looked like another perfect evening of late-night entertainment. But according to whispers from crew members who were there, something went terribly wrong before the night was over. The show that followed quickly spiraled into chaos. Accounts of the night differ, but they all share the same eerie tone. Some say a guest suffered a sudden emotional breakdown during the interview, crying, shouting, revealing deeply personal secrets that left the entire room stunned. Others insist that a backstage argument exploded into a heated confrontation just moments before the cameras went live. A few even claimed Carson himself lost control of the room. For a host famous for staying calm in every situation, that would have been almost unthinkable. What is known for certain is what happened afterward. Almost immediately after the broadcast ended, executives at NBC called an emergency meeting. The tape of the episode was locked away, and within days it reportedly vanished completely. No reruns aired. No transcripts were filed. No official record appeared in the network's archives. It was as if the episode had never existed. Staff members were instructed not to discuss it. The tape was wiped and the reels were destroyed. Even decades later, television historians searching through NBC's massive library have found nothing. Not a still frame, not a catalog entry, not a single piece of documentation confirming that the episode ever aired. When Carson was asked about the rumor years later, he brushed it off with a joke and quickly changed the subject. But those who worked closest to him said the night left a mark. One former producer later admitted quietly, "Something happened during that show that shook Johnny more than he ever let the audience see." The truth of that lost episode may never be fully known. But it wouldn't be the only time something deeply personal shattered the calm surface of Carson's world. Few relationships in late-night television were as famous, or as heartbreaking, as the one between Johnny Carson and Joan Rivers. For more than 20 years, Rivers had been one of Carson's most trusted allies. He had discovered her early in her career, giving her one of her first major television appearances in the 1960s. When she finished her performance that night, Carson turned to her and said words that would echo through her career. "You're going to be a star." And he was right. Rivers quickly became one of the most popular guests on The Tonight Show. Her sharp humor, fearless personality, and lightning-fast wit made her a favorite with audiences. Carson admired her talent so much that he often invited her back again and again. Behind the scenes, their bond grew even stronger. To Rivers, Carson wasn't just a professional mentor. He was a hero. But in 1986, that friendship collapsed almost overnight. That year, the brand-new Fox network approached Rivers with a historic opportunity, her own late-night talk show. If she accepted, she would become the first woman in television history to host a program in the same format Carson had dominated for decades. It was the chance of a lifetime. But Rivers faced a terrible dilemma. Her contract with Fox wasn't finalized yet, and she feared that if the news leaked too early, the deal might fall apart. She decided to wait until everything was official before telling Carson. Unfortunately, the story broke in the press before she could. When Rivers called Carson to explain what had happened, hoping to reassure him that she had never intended to betray him, the conversation lasted only seconds. Carson hung up the phone. He never spoke to her again. That same night, he reportedly ordered NBC to ban Joan Rivers permanently from The Tonight Show. For Rivers, the silence was devastating. Her new show on Fox struggled in the ratings, and the pressure quickly became overwhelming. Just months after the program was canceled, her husband and producer, Edgar Rosenberg, died by suicide. The tragedy shattered her world. And through it all, the man who had once launched her career remained silent. Years later, Rivers would speak openly about how deeply the loss of Carson's friendship hurt her. "He was my hero," she once said quietly. "Losing him felt like losing part of my life." When Rivers finally returned to The Tonight Show stage in 2014, decades after the feud, Carson had already passed away. The reunion with the show that made her famous came far too late for reconciliation. While the Rivers betrayal wounded Carson emotionally, another confrontation threatened something even more personal: his reputation. Throughout the 1970s, Carson's opening monologues were famous for their sharp humor. He often teased celebrities, politicians, and public figures with jokes that were sometimes playful and sometimes biting. One frequent target was the Las Vegas entertainer Wayne Newton. Newton, often nicknamed Mr. Entertainment, was known for his glamorous stage persona and flashy performances. Carson frequently joked about Newton's appearance and style, making him a recurring punchline. At first, Newton laughed along. But as the jokes continued night after night, they began to damage his public image. Rumors about his personal life spread through tabloids and gossip columns. Eventually, Newton had enough. According to several witnesses, the singer arrived unannounced at NBC's Burbank studio one afternoon and marched straight into Carson's office. Inside, Carson was in the middle of a meeting with longtime producer Fred de Cordova. Newton demanded a private conversation. Once the door closed, the mood turned icy. Newton reportedly looked Carson directly in the eye and delivered a blunt warning. "If you ever make another joke about me," he said, "I'll kick your ass." Carson rarely showed fear, but those who knew him later said this was one of the few moments he appeared genuinely shaken. After that day, the joke stopped. But so did any relationship between the two men. Carson never invited Newton back to the show. Years later, Newton would publicly accuse Carson of spreading rumors that harmed his career, calling the host mean-spirited. The confrontation became one of Hollywood's most infamous backstage stories, the night someone finally stood up to the king of late night. Not every uncomfortable moment happened behind closed doors. Sometimes, the tension unfolded live on television. That's exactly what happened when actor Charles Grodin appeared on The Tonight Show. Grodin had built a reputation for his unusual style of comedy. He often played a sarcastic, argumentative character during interviews, blurring the line between performance and genuine confrontation. But one appearance in the early 1990s pushed that act to the edge. At first, the interview seemed normal. Carson asked questions about Grodin's latest project, and the audience laughed politely. Then Grodin leaned forward and asked a question of his own. "Do you even care about your guests?" The room fell silent. Carson blinked, clearly caught off guard. For a split second, the legendary host looked unsure of what to say. "Of course I do," he replied sharply. But Grodin didn't let it go. He continued pressing Carson, suggesting that the host cared more about his own spotlight than the people sitting across from him. The tension in the studio became almost unbearable. Was it a comedy routine, or a real argument? Even the audience seemed confused. Carson's voice grew tighter as the exchange continued. The interview ended with forced smiles and polite applause, but everyone in the studio could feel that something unusual had just happened. Later, some producers suggested cutting the uncomfortable exchange from future reruns. Carson refused. "Leave it in," he reportedly said. For once, the audience had seen the king of late night lose control of the moment. If that interview was tense, another Tonight Show incident descended into pure chaos. It happened in 1975 when two larger-than-life actors shared the couch, Shelley Winters and Oliver Reed. Reed was infamous for his wild behavior and heavy drinking. Producers knew inviting him onto live television carried a risk. But no one expected what happened next. During the interview, Reed began making crude remarks about women in Hollywood, including comments directed toward Winters herself. At first she tried to laugh it off. But Reed kept going. His comments grew louder, more vulgar, and more insulting. Finally, Winters reached her limit. Without warning, she picked up her drink and threw it directly into Reed's face. The audience gasped. Reed sat there stunned, dripping wet. Winters calmly crossed her legs and delivered a cutting line that brought the entire studio to silence. "That's for every woman you've ever insulted." Carson sat frozen behind his desk, completely speechless. The segment ended early, and when the show aired in reruns, large portions of the exchange were quietly removed. But the story spread quickly, becoming one of the most legendary Tonight Show moments ever whispered about in Hollywood. For Johnny Carson, moments like these revealed a truth he understood better than anyone. Live television may look polished and controlled, but beneath the lights, it's always unpredictable. And sometimes, the most unforgettable moments are the ones no one planned. That's why, decades after Carson's final broadcast, these stories still fascinate audiences. Because legends aren't built only on perfection. They're built on the rare moments when perfection breaks.